But also, if you watch people that move laterally really, really well, guys like, man, who would we use? Emmitt Smith, Marshall Falk, guys that almost teleport when they're running with the football, they're insanely powerful. It takes a lot of power, ground reactive force, to get them to move. So, out of all of these, you might be wondering, where do we want to put the emphasis? We've got so much time in our off season and during our season. Where are we going to put the bulk of our emphasis? We want to put it into strength, maximal strength, increasing strength. The reason being is, as Pavel Kopselin said, he's the guy that popularized the kettlebell. He brought it to America. He's an awesome strength and conditioning coach with the Soviet Union. And he said strength is the mother quality of all physical qualities. And this is because, well, let me preface, I put in there, once proper mobility and symmetry have been attained, strength above all else should be the focus of the athlete's training program. If you have proper movement and joint problems, and you train really heavy to increase strength, you're putting problems on top of dysfunction. So we don't want to do that. So your very first thing, a part of that anatomical adaptations, is making sure that you're functioning well. For you three, you younger kids, like that's your first focus, just proper movement. Is everything moving fine? Once that is, then you can start adding some weight and getting stronger. Is that the next one? Yeah, I guess so. The reason we're increasing strength is we're going to talk about relative strength and how we can get a massive increase of power. Like every volleyball athlete, every athlete that's in the power realm wants to be more powerful. The goal of every, let's see, I just went over that. Boiled down to its most simple form, if you want to become the freakiest athlete possible, you need the greatest strength to weight ratio. So we're going to explain this. Let's take Ashley. She weighs 150 pounds. She can squat 150 pounds. Her strength to weight ratio is a 1-to-1 ratio. Meaning she can effectively move her own body weight. However, if Ashley trains her maximal strength effectively over the next X amount of time, can now squat 250 pounds at the same body weight of 150 pounds. Her strength to weight ratio is 1.67. How much of this is making sense to everybody so far? So the thing, like, yes, I got to a point where I could jump pretty damn high. I'm not gonna lie. And the thing that got me there was I was constantly trying to increase my strength to weight ratio. So all of my programming, so I have a vertical project called the 8-week vertical project, and it's not to be a cocky jerk, but it's insanely successful, and it's all based off of relative strength and rate of force production, and it works really well. But anyway, so what we're doing is we're taking Ashley's relative weight. If she's now at 1.67 instead of 1-to-1, we've reduced her relative weight. Now she's moving like 90 pounds of weight rather than 150 pounds. Does that make sense? We're all following? I should have used like even numbers that just make things look better. All right. So if you do that and you increase your relative strength, this is where I geek out. So my company is called Superhuman Performance. I'm a big comic book nerd, so I had to throw in the Hulk. So the Hulk like jumps higher than anybody because he's got crazy relative strength. And there's a YouTube ad. But anyway, maybe that was a dumb addition. I don't know. That's not being well received. So yeah, so if you can increase your relative strength, already you've increased almost everything else that you're looking for as a power athlete. Arlo, what are you doing to me?
I don't know what happened. There you go.
There we go. Gaining greater maximal strength is much easier than some of you might think. It's all about load and or intensity represented by a percentage of your 1 rep max. So let's again refer to Ashley. If you might recall, Ashley originally could lift 150 pounds or a 1 RM of 150 pounds, so a 1 rep maximum of 150 pounds. In order for Ashley to increase her strength to weight ratio, flip the next one. Thanks, buddy. Ashley would need to lift loads or intensities of 75% to 100% of her 1 RM. So this is kind of the key. So how do we increase maximal strength? we're going to use loads and intensities that range anywhere from 75 to 100%. These vary a little, depending on what kind of school of thought you come from. The Soviets, which will be in the next slide, back in the 60s and 80s, they crushed everybody in the world of strength. Powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, they crushed everybody. And they actually used smaller weights. They used 65 to like 85%. Bulgarians, they were another like top tier organization and country. They would use much higher RMs. So, but it's widely recognized, 75 to 100% is where you're going to make your biggest strength gains. So, common weightlifting myth, and this is Shane and Emmett, you guys probably hear this all the time. If I lift really heavy, it's going to make me big, especially no knock, but from the female community. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get huge if I lift all this weight. And it's not true. You just don't produce testosterone. It's not going to happen. So don't worry about that. Go ahead. And we talked about hypertrophy. That's going to make you huge. So the greatest maximal strength gains are obtained under loads of 75, 100%, and at much less volume than hypertrophy. So again, volume is sets and reps. For maximal strength, it's a lot less. The sports scientists of the former Soviet Union discovered that 1/3 to 2/3 volume with 5 to 10 minutes of rest in between sets led to the greatest gains in strength. So there's a chart right there. Those are all the world record holders in various weight classes, and on the left, those are your weights that they set. And the Soviets are the red blocks, and current records are all the green ones. Now, some of those have been skewed because weight classes have changed since then, but you can see back in 1973 to 1992, they're still crushing it. And it's because their planning was far superior to anybody else. And still nowadays, I would still say they're way ahead of everybody else. I've had, maybe some of you would call the pleasure of talking to one of the Russian doping coaches. He's literally a coach that teaches them how to cheat, essentially, doping, cheating, with the most effective means possible. And the stuff that comes out of their country is way ahead. And it's simply because they can do things America can't do. So they get, yeah, Angie, fire away.
Sorry, I don't get the 1/3 to 2/3 volume.
Oh yeah, so let's go over that. So 1/3 to 2/3 volume simply means, let's say we could do a weight for 10 reps. What they would do is they would only go to 3 reps or like 5 reps, and that's where they would stop. Does that make sense? So you're thinking, okay, if I can do this 10 times with this weight, where you're actually, the amount that you're actually going to do is far less than you think. It's only 3 reps to 5 reps.
So if you could squat 100 pounds 10 times, you should do it 5 times and then take a break and do it 5 more times and then take a break.
So greater strength, we're working on, So, mind blown. All right, so yes, they discovered way more volume. They always had more in the tank at the end of a training session. So one thing that separated, again, those Russians and the Bulgarians went way heavier, and they almost went to failure every single training session. You will see that they had some massive spikes in strength, but their longevity plummeted. So they got really strong, but they had very short careers. There are guys that still lift from the old Soviet Union days. They're 80 years old and they're still squatting, 400 pounds, like butt to ground. Not that I'm suggesting you do that, but they were really, really, really smart. So yes, far less volume than you're going to think. So the way I program it, I'm doing way more sets. I'm looking at like 6 to 10 sets, anywhere from like 2 to 5 reps, and then I'm using that 75 to 100%. Is everybody good on that? Yeah, well, we're fine to discuss as much as you guys want to discuss. That's the whole point of this. So,
can you say again what the 1 RM is?
1 RM just means 1 repetition maximum. So that's the absolute most. So let's say, John, what's your 1 rep max for a back squat?
335.
So 3. That's like the most John could do at 335. So we would take percentages of that. So if we were working with 75%, John would take 75% of 335 if he was working on a back squat. Obviously, that doesn't apply to the bench or something like that. It would be disastrous. But yeah, do you have a question, Evan? You're solid, aren't you? Are you good?
Good.
All right, so when we're talking relative strength to weight ratio, why it's important, why you can be super crazy strong and not put on weight. This is the best example I can think of. His name's Richard Hawthorne. They call him the Ant. Can you play that video? He is 128 pounds, and that is 610 pounds on the bar, I believe. 600 pounds. You might have to fast forward it to like the last 40 seconds because I tried to edit it and it kept giving me like, you're breaking some sort of law. Just keep going, keep going. But anyway, this guy's a freaking beast. So we talked about gnarly strength to weight ratios. So I've been very fortunate that I've been able to train some crazy athletes. Yeah, we'll watch them do this here. This is at the animal cage. I don't know if you've ever seen that. So yeah, 132 pounds, and he deadlifts 600 pounds for 4 reps. I think the most he's ever done is like 620, 630. That's insane. If you guys have ever tried to deadlift, but his strength to weight ratio is almost 5-to-1. So he is literally pound for pound the strongest man on the planet. So they have a big weightlifting competition called the Capo. That's where the strongest dudes in the world goes, and he competes against guys that are 350, 400 pounds. And it's a meet that's based off of your strength to weight ratio, and he wins. And he's just crazy tiny. So, fun fact, yes, I've trained dudes from the NFL, NBA, you pretty much name it, some freaks, and anybody, especially volleyball players, like that 40-inch vertical is kind of the mecca. Anybody that's ever had a 40-inch that I've tested has had a minimum of a 2-to-1. So it's not saying that if you get a 2-to-1, you're automatically going to have a 40-inch vertical, but that is like the prerequisite. Until you can back squat 2 times your body weight, I just have never seen it. So when I got to 40.5, I was about $190, and I squat like 395. So I was basically like right there. But anyway, yeah, so 2-to-1, that's the magic number. If you're a volleyball player, and that's really hard to do for so many women, that's why there's not too many 40-inch verticals in the women's sports. But yes, 2-to-1. I know that's kind of scary. Go for it, Arlo. Does anybody have any questions on that? We're following along, we're good.
Are you doing other, I mean, if you're doing 5 to 10 minutes in between, are you doing this like in the circuit and doing other
No.
lifts in between?
No. So the reason being is you're going to build up lactic acid, right? But your central nervous system gets fried from
Okay.
trying to hold that kind of weight. So your central nervous system is the thing firing everything. So you have a motor unit, and that controls all the muscle fibers, and that's all or nothing is the all or nothing principle. They call it that. I can't remember. Anyway, it states like if it needs to, it'll fire every single one of those muscle fibers, but if it doesn't, it doesn't. So the central nervous system, when you're lifting really, really, really heavy, takes a tremendous load. It gets fried. And the ATP, CP that you use to function, to move that kind of intensity, that also gets wiped out extremely quick. And it takes 3 to 5 minutes to clear that out and replenish it. However, again, this comes back to the Soviet Union athletes. They went 5 to 10 minutes because there's also this massive buildup of hydrogen ions that breaks down your muscle. And so they would just sit there and like shake out their arms or whatever. Some of my athletes, most of my athletes, I have them do like hip mobility drills while they're doing it, because that's pretty boring. If you're sitting there for 5 minutes on a squat rack and you've got 10 sets and you've got 5 minutes minimum of rest in between, you can see how long the session will get. So we work on hip mobility, everything like that during in between. So that's an excessive. For creatine phosphate resynthesis, it takes 3 to 5 minutes. But anyway, you can ask John, like John's done the vertical project, and some of those lifting sessions are pretty long.
Slow,
Yeah.
Slow going.
But that's the point. Like the point is not to rush through, the point is to hit your goal.